D-Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. Guys, I was already having a good day because it's a beautiful day in our fair city. Then I remembered I had a bag of Skittles in my car. And now I'm even happier.
That's why you ran outside so quickly. I'm like, where's Adam
Right
going?
before the show, I said, I'll be right back. And I ran downstairs to the car to get the bag of Skittles that I remembered was in the car.
Ain't nothing like a good bag of Skittles.
I can see how it would make you react like that because I don't have Skittles very often. I like Skittles, always have, but Skittles are one thing. Like, you talk about a sugar rush.
Ooh.
I don't know that there's anything you can eat that has a quicker sugar rush than if you grab like a
Just grab a handful of sugar and put it in your mouth.
If you grab one or two,
like
you won't get
dip?
it. But if you take a full fistful and stuff them in there, I'm talking about like 8 or 10, it hits you so fast. you can feel the rush hitting.
You know what? But what I found out about Skittles, and by the way, you like the original kind?
Yes.
It seems like you like the original kind. See, I'm more of the grape kind. Like, I like the grape kind. The original kind is kind of worn on me. It's not as exciting when you go to the store. But have you ever noticed, like, when someone's eating Skittles, you can tell how cool they are? The cool factor.
I
just
did not know
think
that.
about it. Okay, when you pour some Skittles in your hand, this is a tutorial, Skittle tutorial on how you can look cool while eating Skittles. See, some people just open it and they just throw it in their mouth, you know, and it's like, okay, I get it. You want to eat Skittles fast, but others that like myself, they like to, when they're eating Skittles, like to marinate on the Skittles.
Yeah.
They kind of put them in their hand.
Enjoy the
then
experience.
Shake them up a little bit.
I
Then
knew
put
it.
a few
I
in
knew
your
it.
mouth. And
I
then
knew
shake
that's
them
what
up a little bit. That's the cool way of doing it, man. Because nobody really knows what you have in your hand.
It's like you're playing like dice.
Exactly. It's just like, you know, that's the cool way to eat Skittles. Just try it out. Look at yourself in the mirror while you're eating your Skittles and do that.
Over the course of the program, I'm going to test out this theory to see if I look cool eating Skittles.
I'm disappointed because I'm one of those guys who just shovels a big.
Yeah, you can't just shovel them all.
I go for the big rush. Just hit my brain.
When you get a certain age, when you get past the age of 15, no longer can you put 20 Skittles in your mouth. 2 to 3 max. Just put 3 in your mouth. Eat them.
I feel like if you put too many Skittles in your mouth, your jaw starts to hurt.
But you can't enjoy it.
It does work the jaw.
You can't enjoy it.
Yes.
And then you may get that real hard Skittle that's in there and it hurts your tooth. So you can't.
So if I seem happier than usual on today's program, it's because I'm tasting the rainbow.
I like it.
So let's monitor Adam's performance.
Yes, keep in mind. All right.
Skittle factor.
So some interesting news broke this morning, according to Adam Schefter, of course, of ESPN. The Tennessee Titans have granted former Pro Bowl linebacker Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. Landry is getting the chance to look at his options after he led the Titans with 9 sacks last season while starting all 17 games and playing 83.1% of the team's defensive snaps. He also had 71 tackles, 9 sacks, 18 pressures, and 4 pass deflections. Here's the key sentence. He is due a $17.5 million base salary for the 2025 season. So according to Adam Schefter, the Titans have granted Harold Landry permission to seek a trade.
Well, I mean, it's not, to me, it's surprising. This is something that, and we talked about this a lot last year, at the beginning of the season, Willie, about Harold Landry potentially being one of those guys because of his cap number was going up, that he could potentially be traded, released, whatnot. And that was last year before the beginning of the season. And now this year, even though he has been one of the most consistent players, if not the one lone consistent player on defense, he's still getting up there in age, and they need more out of that position. Not to say that Harold Landry isn't a good player, but I think they need more out of that position. And as he gets older and his cap number continues to be a high one, I don't think it would have been, or I don't think it's sort of advantageous for the Titans moving forward to have not only that salary on the docket, but also you see a player that may be declining. in his play. So you try to move him as quickly as you can, knowing he still has something left in the tank, but not enough for you moving forward. So I'm not surprised by this at all. Hopefully, Harold and his team can, facilitate some type of trade, because I do want to see Harold go somewhere where he can continue to prosper and get an opportunity to have a good end to his career. And hopefully it ends in him, playing in the Super Bowl, because again, he's been that one guy that no matter what, he's come out and all he did was play. That's all he does is play football.
Okay, but let's see if we can try to interpret what this means, okay? Because it could mean a couple of different things, and I don't know if I've seen it speculated. When you say he has permission to seek a trade, does that mean that they have gone to him and said, Harold, we can't have you play for the second highest cap hit on the team, $24 million this year. We need to address your contract. And because I've seen it happen this way over history, right? And I'm not saying that has happened here or not. I don't know. Because I don't know if it's as simple as Landry wants to go play for a winning team or something like that. He has got a cap hit that exceeds his value. Would we agree that as good as he is, he's a solid pro, but at $24 million as a cap hit, that's a little high.
Yeah,
agreed. So it reminds me a little bit of the Kevin Byard, right? What do? You're a new GM. You come in and you circle Landry. Okay, Landry is a good player. He's a useful piece, but he's overpaid. What can we do? Well, one of the options is you go to Landry and say, would you play for less? And if the player says no, then that is one thing that you can say, all right, we'll give you permission to go seek a trade. Maybe Chad Brinker has intelligence that during the trade deadline this past year, they sought trade partners or at least explored what a trade value might be for Landry and didn't like what they got. So the agent's probably saying, no, he doesn't want to take a pay cut. He likes playing there. He's not doing it. And so you tell the agent, all right, you go see what the market is. Because what have you always said, D-Mace? The market will tell you what you're worth at this stage of your career. You might think you're worth something. I'm quoting you right now.
Yeah,
you might think you're worth X. The market, though, will dictate what you're actually worth. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the Titans saying, okay, you go find it. You come back to us, and we'll see if we can make something work. So I don't have a problem with this. I'm just wondering, how do we interpret this story? Because Schefter's putting it out there. He's not giving you, they went to Landry and asked for this. Landry went to them and said, I don't want to play here. There are no details at all in there as to why this has come up.
It's a good question, and I will answer that question with another question. What do you think Harold Landry's value is today? Keeping in mind that he missed an entire season, the entire 2022 season, with a knee injury. He has a combined 19.5 sacks over the past 2 seasons. He played and started all 17 games last season. He played in all 17 games the season before, his first season back from injury, but he started only 10. So he has started 27 of 34 games over the past 2 seasons. He seems to have lost a burst. So he's making $17.5 million per season. What do you think he's actually worth right now?
Listen, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. The market will dictate what he's worth.
But if you're the market, what do you think he's worth?
I mean, he's scheduled to make what, 17 million this
17.5.
17.5 is a base salary. His cap hit, if they keep him, is
I think he's around.
million.
I think he's still around that 10 to 12 million dollars. Because again, he still was able to give you 9 sacks. He's more of an all-around player. He's not that player he once was, but I think if put in a perfect situation or a better situation, not a perfect, but a better situation where he's not the long guy trying to get to the quarterback, then I think his numbers will go up. If you give him another guy that is capable of getting 10, 11, 12, 13 sacks, then that means his sack number is going to go on the other side, just like they did when they brought in Bud Dupree. When they brought in Bud Dupree, that allowed Harold Landry before the injury to continue to play a lot single where he was blocked by one guy. When Bud Dupree started getting hurt, then they can flip back to double teaming Harold Landry again. If he goes to a team that has another edge rusher on the other side, I think you will start to see more of the Harold Landry that we saw 2 years ago. Again, I think he's on average 10 sack guy per year, at least for the next 2 or 3 years. But I don't think that's enough for the Titans.
I think that's a really good way to assess it. I think he is a 10 sack guy. He's a steady, good edge rusher. Not great. But as we talked about, if you have Sweat and Simmons on the interior, and let's say you have Abdul Carter, then I think Landry would be in a really good position to have a solid year. But here's what I'm looking at too. On Spot Rack, when you look at that, they will put the years of a guy's career and they will put potential out. And that's when you kind of know that the contract is at a crossroads. So I'm wondering this: if Landry's agent cannot find a trade partner, do the Titans intend to keep Landry at his number, or would they cut Landry at this stage of his career? I think he's too useful, and I don't know that are they up against the cap enough where they really need that money. According to Spot Rack, you would pay a $13 million dead cap hit to cut him. That would surprise me, even though he's going into his age 29 season. Can you say, can you say he's in decline? I don't know. Like that's a tough one for me. Like I want to know what would they do with that extra money that they would save if they just pay the 13 million dead cap hit? Because as we know, edge rushers are hard to find, just like any premium position. It's not like you can just go to the grocery store and get another younger Harold Landry. That's not how it works.
No, here's I think what the issue may be with Harold Landry, and it's by Harold Landry's fault and fault alone. And it's nothing bad. But Harold Landry, he was never that elite pass rusher.
But he's getting paid a lot.
But he's consistent. He's consistent across the board. And when you sign that deal and you have Bud Dupree and you have Simmons and you have Byard on the back end, you have some really good players surrounding him, you can sort of digest the salary. You can say, okay, it's justified. But when you start to have those things around him, but he's still playing at that consistent level, it's not enough for you, especially as he starts to get older and he's 2 years removed from a knee injury. You think in your mind, it's only going to get worse from here on out. So because of his consistency, it wasn't elite play, but it was consistent good play, I can justify as he starts getting older. Well,
it's worth
maybe we can maybe we can get someone else to do that for a lesser price.
What I like though, I'll take the other side of the coin. Am I willing, if I'm not up against the cap, and we know the cap is going up the next couple of years, you're still kind of waiting and seeing how much money are you going to invest in the quarterback position, because you have to budget for that. Could I live with him being overpaid a little bit, knowing that, like you said, you kind of know what you're getting? He's a 10 sack guy, right? He's come back from the ACL. You figure maybe he's got another good season or two in him. The ACL is really the only injury that's kept him out of the lineup for a long, long time. And what is Harold Landry? He's a pro, right? He's a good guy to have in the locker room. He's going to be a good influence on young players. So I like that about him. I can see this going a couple of different ways here.
By the way, his 17-game average, 4 sacks. You both say he's a 10-sack guy. He has 50.5 sacks in his career. His 17-game average, 8.8.
Right.
So,
and the first year, he only started 3 games as a rookie, and he only had 4.5. So if you take that out, it's a little closer to 10.
It's 9.4 if you remove his rookie season. So, yep, thereabouts. I have an idea for a potential landing spot. I happen to know a former Titans coach who apparently now has
Who's
final
that?
say over the roster of the team he's now coaching. And Harold Landry, if I'm not mistaken, played his college football in that region.
He did at the same school.
Could we see Harold Landry
at the same school his son played for? This person you're talking about?
Yes. Could we see a reunion between Harold Landry and Mike Vrabel in New England?
I think
there could be.
Let's say this: if Harold Landry were cut, he would be a hot commodity and get lots of suitors on the free agent market for the right price. It just wouldn't be for the price he's being paid for the Titans. It's a little bit like the Matt Duchene, right? Matt Duchene at $8 million as a guy that has to live up to that contract was not anywhere close to those standards. But Matt Duchene is a $3 million person on a winning team. He's been a huge hit for the Dallas Stars for 2 straight years now. I think Landry could fall into that category.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the report this morning that the Titans have granted Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. Your thoughts on that. Anything you heard yesterday from Mike Borgonzi and Brian Callahan, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that as well at 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We do have a ticket giveaway, which I will be doing sometime this hour, so be listening for that. But if you want to win tickets to a Preds game, then be listening to Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning for Preds Pick to Click. All you have to do is guess a Preds goal scorer, and if they put the puck in the back of the net, you win. Be listening tomorrow morning for the cue to call on Robbie and Rexroad.
They're both worthy of the conversations that they're in right now. You know, they're both good players. I think they've earned the right to be in the conversations they're in. As far as where I see them and how I stack them, that's for me. But I do think they're worthy of those conversations. There's some other good players in this class too, and I do think that one of the things that's most important is that you never make an assumption when you're in this process, and that you treat every prospect, whether you think they're the first pick or the 200 and something pick, that you go through that evaluation phase with the same intensity and thoroughness that you would regardless of where you think they fall. And so you have an accurate evaluation of all the players, where the class stands and how you'd stack the class. That's also really important because there's evidence over the years that there's a lot of players that in those later rounds that end up being impactful players. And so you just make sure that you do your due diligence on all the positions from the top of the class to the back of it. So you have a great feel for where those guys might fall.
That was Tennessee Titans head coach Brian Callahan yesterday discussing Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward at the NFL Combine. And by the way, our NFL Combine updates this week are brought to you by the New Cumberland and Boom Ba's Pizza. The New Cumberland, Nashville's resort-style community overlooking downtown on the Cumberland River. And Boom Ba's, go try their award-winning pizzas at one of their locations in East Nashville, Spring Hill, and Murfreesboro. Boom Ba's Pizza and Watch Bar. Eat, drink, watch. Quickly, before we get to Brian Callahan, we did get one texter on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com about our Harold Landry conversation. The texter writes, does this mean if we get rid of Landry, we are for sure getting Abdul Carter? I love it. Now, it's natural to think that, right? If they're moving on from a pass rusher, that they would draft his replacement. Who's to say? I don't think you can connect those dots necessarily, but it's natural to think that if by moving on from Harold Landry, maybe the Titans have their sights set on Abdul Carter.
You could argue that, but I would also argue that I think when we kick this around, that Carter putting Carter in a great situation, the best possible circumstance to succeed would be Carter on one side and then Landry opposite him to take some matchups away. Plus you have, in theory, Sweat and Simmons in the middle. I think you could give Carter, a really good ability to go in there with a chance to make an impact, and you fortify one good spot on your roster.
I think that's a good front four. If you have Sweat, Simmons, Landry, and then you add an Abdul Carter. But I don't think you can look too much into them, giving Harold Landry and his representatives permission to seek a trade. I don't think you can just assume right away, oh, they're doing that because they're going to draft Abdul Carter number one. No, I don't think that's the case. What they're trying to do is they see an individual that is getting up there in age, even though he's 28, 29 years old. Yes, he's playing good football, but, yes, he's playing good football. And they just feel that if they are going to move him, this may be the best opportunity to move him because he still has some tread on the tires, and he has more tread than not. So if we try to move him now, we may get more for him as opposed to, keeping him for another year and things may not go as planned. So I don't think this has anything too much to do with whether they're going to draft Abdul Carter or not. I just think this is about Harold Landry and what how they see him in their future moving forward.
By the way, today at the NFL Combine, Abdul Carter made the case to be selected number 1 overall in the NFL draft. And he said, defensive players impact the game just as much as the quarterback. All the teams that have won Super Bowls, they have that one standout player. I feel like I'm that, end quote. So no shortage of confidence from Abdul Carter. But let's get back to Brian Callahan. So that was Brian Callahan in his formal news conference setting at a podium. But after he did that availability, he went off to the side with the Titans reporters we all know from here in town and answered some more questions. And there was one answer that he had that I found to be really interesting. He was talking about working with young players versus fixing young players. I thought his answer was really insightful. This was Brian Callahan off to the side on that topic.
Yeah, I'm very careful with being able to proclaim you can fix something. There's definitely things you can improve that are coachable, that are quote unquote fixable. But you also got to be very mindful of what it is you're thinking you can fix. And I think you have to guard against that as a coach, because as a coach, you're always very confident. I can fix that. And sometimes you can't, and that's okay. You can't fix every issue every player has, but are they things you can work with? Whatever it is you think you can fix, can you deal with it if you can't fix it to the way you need to? So that's a tricky proposition when you're talking about fixing players. I think that you got to guard against the overconfidence that a coach can have sometimes. You have to be able to be honest about what is a actual fixable trait or technique, or is it just how they play the game? And then the flip side of that is, for a guy like, using Mahomes as an example, you don't want to take away what's special about it, whereas some things you would look at him coming out of college and you'd be like, man, we got to fix that. But it ultimately ends up being what's one of his superpowers as a quarterback is the ability to create and do things off the structure that when you watch him on tape in college, you're like, man, how do you rein that in? And the answer is you don't want to. I think when you watch how he's played over his career. So I think every situation is different. It's individualistic for each player. But I'm also very, very careful of saying you can fix particular things.
That was Brian Callahan off to the side, so he wasn't at the podium with the microphone. But I did think that response was interesting, specifically talking about trying not to be overconfident as a coach and thinking, I can fix this, especially with the experience he had this past season with Will Levis. I just thought that was a really insightful answer from Brian Callahan.
Yeah, and maybe he's thinking loud and clear and talking about Levis as he's talking about it, because there were articles written over the summer. Hey, this is what we've worked on. This is what we're doing. And I don't think he ever promised to, quote, fix Will Levis. But we talked about this a lot. Why did he get the job? Largely because they could envision him being the right guy to bring out the best in Will Levis. And we know how it went.
Yeah, we did. But I don't think that, in regards to the Harold Landry situation, I don't kind of make a correlation between the two. But yeah, when you get a head coaching job, it's for a reason. And one of the reasons was, because of who he's worked with, and him, because of who he worked with, we assume that, okay, he can develop quarterbacks. And I'm not saying that he can't or he can't. But when that is on your resume, then you do think inherently like, yeah, I can go in and fix whatever problems, you're having, you're having at that position. And I'm talking about the quarterback position. So he's right. Sometimes you gotta taper, your expectations on how you can sort of, I wouldn't say fix an individual, but help that guy continue to develop at a pace that's good for the organization.
We've mentioned this a couple of times, but when the Titans hired Brian Callahan and they put out the news release talking about why they hired Brian Callahan, what's the one thing we always highlighted? The Titans said, well, he worked with Matthew Stafford and he worked with Joe Burrow and he worked with Derek Carr and he worked with Peyton Manning in various forms, right? He wasn't necessarily the right-hand man for all of those quarterbacks, but he's been around really good quarterbacks. So immediately for Titans fans, the expectations were set. He's worked with some really good quarterbacks. So we hope that he can turn, at the time, our promising young quarterback into a franchise quarterback. And that obviously did not happen. Now, perhaps to the answer that we played just a couple of minutes ago, maybe Brian Callahan tried his darndest. I'm sure he tried his darndest to fix Will Levis. And perhaps Will Levis was unfixable. But the issue is because Will Levis struggled so mightily, that reflects poorly on the head coach who was hired because of his work with quarterbacks. So almost immediately, Brian Callahan was behind the 8 ball, so to speak, And I think there are Titans fans out there, and if you're one of them, you can call us or text us 615-737-1025, who see the idea of the Titans drafting a quarterback, whether it's Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or someone else, and wondering if they can trust Brian Callahan to be the one to get Sanders or Ward or insert young quarterback here to where they ultimately want to go. So, I mean, I think that Brian Callahan knows one thing, Willie, you've said many times, especially at the end of the regular season. One thing I appreciate about Brian Callahan is he's honest. Not only he's honest about himself and what he can do better. And it sounds sort of like a growth moment perhaps there, realizing that maybe he can't do everything, but there are going to be a lot of people who expect him to do everything. And it doesn't look good for him because of what happened last year with Will Levis.
It's proximity. That's what it is. He has benefited from proximity. Now, again, I can say, well, when he worked with Peyton Manning was Peyton Manning. What more? I mean, I'm sure there are things that you listened to while Peyton Manning was discussing things, but Peyton Manning was Peyton Manning. So how much influence did you have over Peyton Manning? How much influence did you have over Carr? How much influence did you have over Stafford? Now, if anything, what you should be looking at is what he was able to do with Browning. And because I think he had a direct hand in that, because they drafted him. Callahan was on the staff prior to them drafting Browning. So now you get to work with him from day one. And when he got his opportunity, you saw some good play. So if you're going to look at anything, you look at that. I'm not looking at Carr. I'm not looking at Stafford. I'm not looking at Peyton Manning because those guys were established. Well, at least two of the three. Carr probably not as much, but Stafford and Manning, to me, they were developed, or they were who they were or becoming who they were. So how much influence did you have on them? Let's talk about how much influence that he had on Browning, which I think he had a huge influence on him. So, like he said, when you come into a situation like this, you feel you can fix or you can help this guy develop. And it just wasn't that way. And maybe, just maybe, we gave him too much credit in saying that because he worked closely to all these people, he's the guru. I'm guilty of it. I said it.
Right.
But maybe we gave him too much credit.
I think sometimes we have this vision that these guys have to be miracle workers. I think that's where we're trying to be fair and say, how much can a coach really do if somebody is just not cut out for the job, right? That's sometimes, but because he was brought in the way he was, I think maybe we got a little unrealistic thing. The fix you think cracks me up because haven't we all seen the movie? There's probably dozens of movies where you can remember a scene of some couple in a relationship fight. Why are you always trying to fix me? Why? Stop doing that. Stop trying to fix me.
I don't want to be fixed.
I don't want to be fixed. We're imperfect, okay? I'm not perfect.
It's probably storming. They're standing outside. There's always a torrential downpour during these arguments. It's like, guys, go inside and yell. Why are you outside? It's.
So what
but
you're saying
I hear
is,
what you're saying.
What you're saying is Brian Callahan and Will Levis should have went inside, instead of standing outside and Will Levis saying, "Why are you trying to fix me?"
Will Levis, I see as the character in the movie who screws up with the girl and shows up on her doorstep and it's raining outside and she's inside, but he's outside and he's soaking wet because he's been working on what he wants to say. And then when they finally, they make up, the sun comes out.
His favorite movie is Say Anything. And he just pulls a boombox.
Yes.
One of my favorite movies, by the way.
Say Anything.
If you
It's a great
only,
movie.
if you only know that scene, then you probably don't appreciate the movie because it's way more. It's way more than that point. But that's the iconic moment that you think about when you hear that movie.
So Will Levis as Lou Dobler is what we're thinking right here. Standing outside.
Lloyd Dobler.
Yeah. John Cusack playing Lloyd Dobler. Standing outside Brian Callahan's office with a boombox.
Yeah.
What song do you think is playing in that situation?
Peter Gabriel?
Let me take me back.
615-737-1025. 1025. What is your confidence level in Brian Callahan that if the Tennessee Titans draft a young quarterback, how much do you trust Brian Callahan to develop that young quarterback? 615-737-1025. Preds fans, don't miss Smashville Live tonight at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue at 6 o'clock. See your Predators star players up close and personal. Get autographs and pictures. Tonight's player guest, Ryan O'Reilly. That's tonight, 6 o'clock, Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue.
All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. If you're in need of money, you got a vision, maybe it's a home improvement project. Maybe you want to build out that man cave downstairs or the outdoor patio with the grill and the outdoor TV, whatever it might be that you have, and you need cash to make your home even more valuable. That's where Loan Pronto comes in. They're the leader in quickly converting your home's equity into cold, hard cash so you can take that money and address your need. Loan Pronto has several easy options to let you access that cash from your home. No paperwork, no cumbersome process, no junk fees, often no appraisal. The average homeowner has over $300,000 in equity, so that's your money if you need to use it. So get approved in as little as 1 day with no hard credit pull up front. Just give them a call, 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Get the money you need. loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
Sure. I think the best way to put that is our job as coaches is to put players in the best position to have success. And I would never sacrifice talent for system. It's always going to be player driven and player first. So if you can find a great player, we fit them. And however that looks, there's plenty of plays in football in all three phases that you can find ways for guys to have success. So I would always say the player is going to come first, and it's our job as coaches to fit what we do around that player, whether that's an offensive lineman, a receiver, a quarterback, a pass rusher, whatever that looks like. Our job is to fit the system to the talent, and I would never sacrifice scheme over talent at the end of the day as a general philosophy.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday at the NFL Combine. Chuck on our text line pointed to that quote and said, to me, that is the sign of one hell of a coach if you are able to implement this. And he contrasted it with Andrew Brunette. So far, making some tweaks, but not being able to find the system for these great players. Either we turn over most of our players to fit Brunette, or we will have to get a new coach. And we will talk Predators later in the program. But Chuck pointed out that quote from Callahan is something that he really liked yesterday. Also, by the way, speaking of the Predators, be listening at the end of this segment because we have a pair of tickets to give away to the Predators game tomorrow night against the Winnipeg Jets. So be listening to the cue to call at the end of this segment. Dylan on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, Will Levis is the guy in the movie who's waiting outside the girl's house with a boombox over his shoulder and throwing pebbles at her window, asking for a second chance, but she won't even come look outside.
This would be the third or fourth chance. This ain't the second chance, because the second chance was during the season. He got like 2 chances during the season.
I mean, I've said this many times. I think that Will Levis is straight out of central casting for a quarterback. If you are a movie studio making a film about a football team, Will Levis I almost said it. I did. I stopped.
He fits the profile.
He fits the profile to a T of what a quarterback generally looks like. But
is he the guy that throws the pebbles at the window and he's got the wrong window and the dad comes out instead of the girl?
Or breaks the window.
Or breaks the window? Or both?
That wouldn't be good.
Will Levis picks up like a heavy rock and throws it through the window versus just a little pebble to get the attention. There's just glass shattering everywhere.
Oh,
Josh on our text line says, I trust Callahan to develop the young quarterback just as much as I trust Will Levis to mentor that quarterback.
Well, that's not much trust at all. Do I think he has the ability to develop a young quarterback? Again, I look at, when I saw Browning come in and what he was capable of doing.
You're referring to Jake Browning in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
yes.
When he had to fill in for
Joe Burrow
when he got hurt. And he almost led him to the playoffs that season 2 years ago. So if I'm looking at recency, and if I'm doing that, then I gotta believe that he does have the ability to develop a young quarterback. Maybe just maybe Will Levis, because some quarterbacks pick up very quickly, and you can see the development as you're going. They're able to take it from the meeting to the to the practice field, from the practice field to the playing field on game day. And Callahan said this, like, Will Levis can take it from the classroom to the practice field. What's happening is there's a disconnection from the practice field to the game field. And if your Wi-Fi if it doesn't have 5 bars, then you ain't gonna have much success in the league. If you're able to take it from the classroom to the practice field, but then all of a sudden from the practice field to the game field, there's no connection, you will never have consistency in this league. And I think that's what Brian Callahan started to find out about Will Levis. Like, if we just had the 2 parts right here, we're good. But the minute we cross over to that third part, which is the most critical part, he hasn't been able to do it. They need to find someone that can do it. I can teach you. I believe that Callahan can teach him and try to help develop him. but I can only develop you so far. If you can't take it from the playing field, from the practice field to the playing field on game day, then I can't use you anymore.
He had a quote to that effect during the combine. Perhaps we'll play it later in the show. David on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com says Levis would miss the window. If he's throwing the pebble or the rock at the window, he would miss the window.
Well, that'd be bad. You're just hitting the brick, huh?
Chip the paint.
Here's a reference I
so.
don't quite understand because this is not a film that I've seen, but I know Willie probably has. Mike in Lebanon says, Will Levis is the guy Steve Martin was trying to help in the movie Roxanne.
Oh, that's when he had the huge nose.
Interesting. Yeah.
And he was telling the guy.
I have not seen that
He
movie.
had the guy had something in his ear, didn't he? And he was telling the guy what to say. Yeah.
So it's based on a very old play,
old movie.
Cyrano de Bergerac, I think it's called.
Yes.
Where the guy has, he has a big nose, but he knows what the ladies need to hear.
He's good with
there's
words.
the guy. There's the handsome guy that just has no clue. He's a rockhead, and so he's got the woman that he's in love with, Steve Martin. But then you know who actually plays the guy in the movie Roxanne? It's Slider from Top Gun. Okay, so it's he's and Daryl Hannah is the woman. So Steve Martin feeds the lines to Slider so that but secretly Steve Martin is in love with Daryl Hannah and he's the one, but he just doesn't have the confidence because he's got the big nose.
But when that's a good segue, I guess.
I won't spoil with how the movie ends, but
yes,
that's the premise.
So the one thing that I remember is from opening week of the season in Chicago. Right, the Titans jumped out to a multi-possession lead. Things were looking like it looked like it was going to be smooth sailing for the Titans, but then Will Levis did Will Levis things. The special teams did special teams things. And if I recall correctly, after the game, Brian Callahan said to Will Levis, you don't have to play hero here, right? Just don't make any mistakes. And what did Will Levis do? Made a catastrophic mistake. To me,
it really made two.
He did. But to me, I don't know if I don't blame coaching for that. What Brian Callahan told Will Levis, don't do this. And Will Levis, like my 3-year-old son, when I tell him not to do something, said, I'm going to do it. And that's and that's what happened. That Will Levis has the same mentality as my 3.5-year-old son in that particular moment. It's like, to me, like, I don't put that on Brian Callahan.
No, I mean, you can't put it on Brian Callahan, but because he's the head coach, because he was brought in here to develop the young quarterback, a lot of this is going to fall at his feet. They can get rid of both of them if they wanted to. So it's not like, well, we're going to, get rid of the quarterback because we can't get rid of the head coach, or get rid of the head coach because we can't get rid of the quarterback. No, if you wanted to, you can get rid of both of them. I don't think they are. I hope they're not putting the bulk of the blame on Will Levis because, again, on Brian Callahan, because, again, even with Mason Rudolph, and I think Mason Rudolph is an okay backup. Even with Mason Rudolph, the offense ran a little bit better with him at quarterback. Why? Because he could anticipate, he could read the defense, and he can get the ball away a lot earlier than, say, Will Levis would. So I don't necessarily blame him, Brian Callahan, because if you're doing what you're supposed to do in the film room, which Brian Callahan, I believe he was doing, and you're doing what you're supposed to do during practice and you're correcting him when things aren't going well, then you expect, once I've corrected you on plays we are then going to run in 6 days, you shouldn't make that same mistake again. You shouldn't. And then you go out there and you make that same mistake. That's not on the that's not on the offensive coordinator. It's not. I thought we discussed this. Right. And even so much so, just to give people an insight, so much so that on Saturday night, the day before the game, quarterbacks, after everybody's left, quarterbacks are still going over things they need to do and if they show this, don't do this. If they show this, don't, do this or do that. And if I'm doing that as a coordinator, head coach, I expect
That's all you can do.
Exactly. That's all I can do is give you the tools and show you how to work them. But then
The tutor cannot take the test for you.
Basically.
Yeah. You know what? You brought up that game, right? I'm flashing back to that game in Chicago. And then, of course, the following week against the Jets. This is a crazy what if, and, if ifs and nuts were, all that's saying. This is a what if. If they had won that game, if he just did what the coach said, don't screw it up, and they hang on and win at Soldier Field, it has you wondering, if he learns from that, do they have enough to beat the Jets? Remember, they jumped out 10-0. They were looking good, and then he had another catastrophic goof up that turned the game around to what turned out to be a pretty bad Jets team. Like, what if they were 2-0? Like these are all the things I'm sure Brian Callahan going back through his whole season and saying, what if he just would have avoided the terrible mistakes, right? Even after the block punts, they still, if he had listened to him and not had those kind of plays, maybe they go 2-0. Could we be sitting here talking about a different thing? Probably not. I mean, you are who you are.
I don't remember which game it was. It was early in the season where the cameras caught Brian Callahan after one of those turnovers saying, hey, what the F are you doing? Right. So my point is that, Brian Callahan's first season did not go well overall. But when it comes to the idea of developing a quarterback, I chalk it up to Will Levis just not being reachable in certain aspects. And I know that reflects poorly on Brian Callahan, and he's going to have to work to convince people otherwise. Maybe I'm more bullish on Callahan than others. 615-737-1025. All right. I told you I was going to have a cue to call. Be caller number 3 at 615-737-1025. You will win a pair of tickets to see the Nashville Predators take on the Winnipeg Jets at Bridgestone Arena tomorrow night. Puck drop at 7. Be caller number 3 at 615-737-1025. Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow will join us next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace Finn, Ginadonic, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Ving, and almost forgot our names here. Kind of important to know. Joined, as we are every Wednesday, by Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Hutton, it's NFL Combine season. Mike Borgonzi spoke yesterday. Brian Callahan spoke yesterday. I listened to interviews that Mike Borgonzi did not only at the podium, but he did an interview with Ian Rappaport on NFL Network. He did an interview with Mike Florio. And is it Chris Sims on Pro Football Talk? I don't remember which Sims it is.
Chris.
Yep.
The one thing I know about Chris Sims is he needs to unbutton that top button. It's a little too tight, man. It's very distracting. Anyway, I listened to multiple interviews Mike Borgonzi did yesterday. Said absolutely nothing of substance. But what was the most interesting thing you heard, didn't hear, or something you were reading in between the lines that came out of what the Titans talked about yesterday?
Well, I mean, look, it's line season, right? They clearly were talking up both quarterbacks. They're creating that buzz about, they're hoping that these guys are fought over. They hope by the New York Giants. That's my opinion on that. Look, here's my takeaway. How many people in the media and just in general going around in the draft have the Titans pegged for a one position, or they're going to do this or that? And you have Borgonzi admitting that they haven't even talked to Cam Ward yet. They don't know him. And I mean, think about the timeline here of free agency and the Titans trying to decide, are they going rookie quarterback at number 1 overall, or are they going veteran quarterback in free agency? You've got to make up your mind pretty fast. And you've got 18 minutes in this cattle call that is the NFL Combine whenever you're doing these interviews, and how they're going about doing that is just, having the coach sit down and go over certain plays. You're trying to figure out who these people are, not just as a player, but as, just day-to-day guys in the average walk of life. I mean, it's a stressful time right now for Borgonzi and company.
The news broke earlier this morning. I guess you could call it news, but as Willie said, there's a lot left unanswered, that the Titans have granted Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. When you saw that cross your timeline, what was your first thought?
Well, it's going to fit what both sides, I guess, want in this if they can facilitate a trade. To me, this signals the Titans are looking for value for a trade. They want more picks. They want more draft capital. We've talked about this on the show. If you're just going through certain players and who brings value in the draft on your roster, I mean, Landry's there. Landry is great for Landry. He has zero guaranteed money left on his contract. So at age 28, he'll be 29 in June. Now's the time to get that potential final cash in. If you're just a player mindset, agent mindset, no guaranteed money left, go get it if you can get it. And the Titans would like to facilitate a trade and more or less buy a pick, because based on his salary and what the team would be acquiring, I wonder if maybe throw some guarantee on it if you're the new team acquiring him, and the Titans pick up part of the chunk of whatever would be on the deal. Again, you're buying the pick if you're trading Landry, and it's going to be an overhaul of the especially at edge rusher. It's an overhaul, and I'm viewing this through the lens of who else has the value, right? I think it's all about Landry today. Who else might be valuable for more draft capital? And from Landry's perspective, look at this. I mean, consider what he meant to their pass rush. Their pass rush isn't much, but he had 9 sacks. The rest of the team, 23 in 17 games. The rest of the team had 23 sacks. Harold Landry had 9. You've got the pass rush that's already really they need a ton of production to improve, and he's the guy you could rely on. So I do think there's value on the horizon for him. The Titans, I don't know what they get in return for that, but again, it's more than just extending a player when you can go young on the defensive line. And keep this in mind too. 9 sacks, only 20 players last season had 9 or more sacks. So 39 players as edge rushers on the depth chart, they made at least $10 million last year. So as far as the guaranteed money goes and everything else, right now Landry has none of that. I know there's a cap hit involved in all this, but I think it's about acquiring draft picks. And for Landry, he should be all for this because he can get some guarantee.
Yeah, the question was asked of me, Hut, by both Willie and Adam. Well, how much do you think he's worth on the market? Well, Adam asked the question, and you basically hit it. To me, he's a $10 to $12 million guy, based upon what he has accomplished thus far and what you think he will accomplish moving forward. So that would come at a bargain. $10-12 million for a guy that's going to get you, and he may get you more sacks depending on how good the defense is as a whole.
You can count on him.
Yeah, you can count on him.
Play.
He's going to play 16 to 17 games.
Yep.
He's going to give you. He's going to play 80, almost 90% of the plays, and he's going to give you consistent play. But looking at this, do you think by them allowing Harold Landry to seek a trade, do you think there's any indication on what they may do with the number 1 pick?
It's a great question, Mace. Look, my first reaction to that is they're looking to trade it. Mm-hmm. And they're going veteran quarterback. You go veteran quarterback in my grand scheme, okay? Mm-hmm. And you can trade a second round pick for Stafford. Let me just throw that out there. The Giants are also involved in this, but the Titans need the Giants to want Cam Ward. They need that because Cleveland's taking a quarterback. They need that rookie quarterback in Cleveland. You need the Giants to want to get ahead of Cleveland, or you need Cleveland to want to guarantee who they're going to draft. And then you take Carter if you're getting rid of Landry. You've got to go young there. And then you get your second round pick back if you're going with Stafford or whoever. By trading out of one, you get the haul that you need to replace that pick and more, and you put more talent and depth around you and you acquire picks. That, in theory, is what I see because they need Carter, the elite player. If you're just talking about the type of player that you're supposed to get at number 1 overall, who knows what they think of Cam Ward? Again, I'll go back to that they don't know him that well right now. It seems like I know Carter's already met with them, but with Landry out, and again, 9 sacks for him, 23 combined for the rest of the team. They have to address and overhaul the defensive front just like they've got to address offensive line. And to do that, Carter's a great way to start that. But you need the veteran quarterback in free agency or through a trade, and they've got that pick in the second round, just like the Giants do, though. The Giants are with them in the second round, right in front of them, I believe. So that's the intriguing part. Do the Giants want to go veteran quarterback, or do they want to go young?
Isn't it a sort of an indication of where this organization is when you give permission to your best pass rusher, permission to seek a trade? Why? Because you're trying to, one, dump a little bit of the salary, but also you're trying to get picks, maybe in this year's draft or the next year's draft. But it's telling because, like you said, outside of Harold Landry, they don't have much of anything.
It's
to
Simmons
sort of
and
go.
Hooker.
Yeah, Simmons and that's it. That tells you where this organization is and how long it may take them to get out of the hole that they've dug themselves in.
Which means they're doing the smart plan. They're and using the assets that they have to then draft. And again, this is the plan. To execute the plan, you need to draft well, and that's what the Kansas City Chiefs have done. They brought in great role players early on to start the way they built that franchise to what it is right now through free agency. And this is a crucial time period coming up here for the Titans. Again, that's all well and good as long as you evaluate the players and you make the right choices. Otherwise, you continue to get stuck in quicksand, right? You're just kind of churning. But right now, I think it's, if you're building for where you want to be, is Landry there by the time you get there, or is the player that if you get in return? What is he? What do you guys think he is? A 4th or 5th round pick in return?
See,
5th round?
That's what I'm weighing, Hut, is what is the trade? Because I'm guessing, and you tell me your theory on it. I'm guessing they had to have explored this last season during the trade deadline just to see if there was anybody that would give him anything. So if it's a fourth round pick, I get what you're saying. That could be a guy that is playing in your new stadium, and Landry's probably not playing for the next really good Titans team.
It could be a next year pick. Honestly, this year's draft is stocked with pass rushers. We could see 6 or 7 drafted in the first round. So are you going to pay Landry $10 million plus per year? And again, he's like one of the 20 some odd pass rushers that had 9 or more sacks in the league. 20 last season had 9 or more sacks. You're going to pay him in the top 20, or are you going to go young if you need pass rush? This is a great year for that on the edge. So it's not a great year to trade Harold Landry, which is why you want him to go ahead and seek the trade now instead of trying to trade him on draft weekend, because you're not going to have many calls.
So what would you take?
What would you take? I don't know if it's a 4th round pick because of the youth in the draft and what you end up paying that player in the long-term value.
Do you think that if they can't find a trade, that the Titans are willing to keep him at that number? Because something that affects the value of a trade is a team sitting there going, should we trade a pick or should we wait and see if they will cut him?
Well, I think this is where the Titans benefit if they get a deal that Landry likes. You can facilitate the trade, or Landry plays on the deal where there's no guaranteed money involved. So it's kind of like the Titans are saying, well, we have you under contract. You can go seek the trade. You can get your guaranteed money. We understand we're looking to build through the draft as well, and you're part of the value that we have in order to do that. But yeah, I think that he could come back and just play. But
that gives you a little leverage if you're willing to do that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I tend to lean towards their trading him, and again, I don't like it for 2025, but I understand what they're doing given the fact that they've already stated a month and a half ago that they have a goal of 30 picks and 12 in the top 100 or whatever. That's how you do this, and you only have you count on one hand how many players they can move during this draft in order to acquire that.
And would consider too,
they need picks this year.
Yeah, and you consider too, what would the trade market potentially look like for him at the trade deadline during the season next year, right? That would have to be something you consider.
Sure. And hey, it doesn't have to necessarily be picks. You could trade player for player. You can get a right. Again, I'm just throwing out scenarios of what the value is for Landry versus what another team may be wanting to unload. There's creative ways to do it if you're the agent, but it's all about getting Landry guaranteed money on a contract right now. That's it's great for him if he stays healthy. But again, you want to ensure yourself, if you're Landry, because of his age, he's going to be 29 in June, and this is where the Logan Ryan, for instance, loaded up for the final time at 29, right before he got to 30. He was on 3-year contracts. That's what it's time for Landry to get out of what he's in and get more money now, as opposed to trying to kick the can down the road, which is what you would do if you're a younger player.
Hut, we went through the list of potential free agent wide receivers, and we were like, D-Mace took them all through the strengths and weaknesses, and we're like, man,
there's no Derek Masons in this list, huh?
It was fraught.
Definitely not.
Let's just say it was fraught with risk. Okay. So all that being said, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, I think we would all agree they'd like to have him back. He knows where he fits here. He had a really nice year last year. So the question always ends up being, What are you willing to pay him? He's been a guy that is the bargain basement guy who overachieves, but now he might be in a position to make a little money here. So what are you going to pay him?
I mean, I let the market dictate that, Willie. I let him go test it. I mean, that's what happened last time. I don't see the clamoring for. There's not a player that the Titans have going into free agency that I would be personally worried about signing on the first day. So the stress level of getting your guy back. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is a great value to the Titans, but I'm sure you saw some other Nick Westbrook-Ikhines in the list that Mace went through. And that's no knock on NWI. He was great for this Titans team this past year. He's a bright spot. And Callahan's already admitted, hey, one of my regrets is not getting him in the game more as we tried to figure things out early in the season. Callahan said, hey, I kind of waited too long. And he apologized to NWI after the season for that. There are ways to implement more packages for him. But, I mean, all he does is catch touchdowns. I would want him back, but how much are you going to be using him? That's the big – and who's your quarterback? That's the other part of it.
One basketball question for you, Hut.
Yeah.
You guys follow Tennessee. They're on a nice little run here. They've won 6 out of 7. They've got some really good wins during that mix. How important is it for them to strive for a 1 seed? Does it matter in your mind? And as you kind of size up them in the postseason, how would you compare this year's Tennessee team to last year's team, especially with the way they're playing right now?
I tend to lean towards would you agree, Willie, games are played in like the 60s and 70s in the tournament?
I definitely think Tennessee, that's how they want the games to be played, right?
Yeah. And
because they're not playing, they're presuming they're not playing Alabama, and that would be interesting. Alabama is the team that likes to play in the 80s, 90s.
Saturday, right? Tennessee and Alabama on Saturday.
And when Alabama's cold, they're done, right? Like that's just how it is. Tennessee, I like the fact that they can D up because you can win in different ways. That's that you have to do that in the tournament. I like that for this Tennessee team. You would know better than I based on your bracketology, okay? The Tennessee 2 seed is a very beneficial bracket from what I understand. Like where they are based on the top 16 that was released a month ago or 3 weeks ago, they looked pretty good based on who they would be paired with. I like that. And I mean, this year, I mean, if you're a 1 seed, there's going to be an SEC team behind you with this 2. So I don't know. I think there's just a bunch of teams, and then there's Auburn, quite frankly. And Tennessee's one of them. They have as good of a shot to make a run in this tournament as they did last year. I view Tennessee last year as more full throttle, so to speak, even though they're on a run right now. And do you think they're peaking too soon? That's the other thing that comes to mind for me is you want to have this run going into the tournament, do you not? The SEC tournament.
I think the SEC tournament, I think that's going to be grueling for the team that wins it.
Right.
Can't wait.
That's going to be the challenge for whoever goes deep in that tournament is, do you expend a lot and do you still have enough to make the run in the big tournament?
So is it beneficial for a team like Auburn, who's all but insured a number 1
Yeah,
slot?
They will be the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah,
is it beneficial for them to
Yes.
go through the gauntlet, which many believe is the SEC might just be as tough or tougher than the actual tournament?
Yeah, and whether it is or not, it's going to be a grind, right?
Exactly.
If you're in it, it's a great question. The one thing I would say about this Tennessee team, I still think they're down 1 shooter. I'm a big fan of their frontline guys. Like Ziegler's really playing well right now.
Yeah, he's an alpha.
But I feel like that one complimentary shooter, the Mashaks, those guys, that they could be cold on a given night. That's the one weakness that I would be concerned about.
And I would say as well, Hutton, I'm looking at the official seeding from the NCAA from a week and a half ago. So in this seeding, they had Tennessee as a 2 in the same region as number 1 Duke, number 3 Arizona, and number 4 St. John's. They had Florida as the 4th number 1 seed, Florida's loss last night to Georgia opens the
Right.
door for Tennessee to replace Florida on that one line, I think.
Interesting.
I mean, look, if I'm a Tennessee fan, I want to have the 1 seed. Let's go. But I mean, where are you playing and all that stuff too? Hey, can I pose one question to you?
Sure.
The committee with all of the SEC teams in the bracket, how do you think they will pair the bracket when the bracket comes out? Do you think they try to avoid the second round conference matchup because there's going to be some of these, or do you do it early so that you have more conference to conference matchups later in the bracket? They're not supposed to do that. They say they don't. They absolutely will. And I'm curious how they treat the conference, the SEC versus SEC, because they avoid that in round one, and they'll do that based on teams that go to Dayton.
Especially also when you figure in you're trying to spread out the Big Ten teams as well.
Yeah,
there could be a lot of those teams. But how do you separate them all?
Yeah.
I don't know
Here's
if you
the
can
problem: if they get 12 teams in, maybe 13, hell, it's going to be hard to try to divide them all. It's going to be hard.
And then on top of that, how many teams from the Big Ten will get in?
Exactly.
Probably at least 10, right?
You may see a second round matchup. I would like to see, a third, a Sweet 16 matchup. I think you would get more eyes on the game.
Like, could you mathematically
I don't think they can get away from seeing
without a Big Ten,
a 32
playing a Big Ten or an SEC playing an SEC in the second round? I mean, if there are that many teams in your field,
I don't think the only way you get out of it is if it's
upsets in round one.
If it's an upset, that's the only way you get out of it.
But so I if I'm just thinking right now on real time, most of the time those conference matchups would happen Elite Eight on, right? They do a good job of potting it, by and large. They don't do this for round one, but I think by round two we could see a rematch from the SEC tournament the week prior. I mean, I'm intrigued how the committee does it because again, they say they don't do that. They absolutely do, and I'm curious how they treat it because we've seen this before. The bracket by and large is done by the time the championship game is even tipping off on SEC championship day. So maybe it's not this year, which is more intriguing.
Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow joining us as he does every Wednesday. Hutton, great stuff, my friend. We'll talk next week.
Yeah. Always enjoy this, guys. Have a great rest of the week.
You as well. 615-737-1025. Vanderbilt plays tonight. Let's keep this college basketball conversation going. You can tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt men's basketball as the Commodores take on Texas A&M with a 6 o'clock tip-off and the pregame show starting at 5:30. Vanderbilt men's basketball presented by Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball coming to Nashville's Municipal Auditorium now through March 2nd. Go to auprobasketball.com for more details and to purchase tickets. D-Mace, Van Ginadonic, 102.5, 106.3 the game.
Will Ferrell outside the window.
Yes. A little Peter Gabriel, right?
Yes. Classic.
Classic. Tying into our Say Anything conversation from earlier in the program. So as I mentioned before the break, Vanderbilt back in action tonight. A tough one on the road at number 12, Texas A&M. Texas A&M lost its previous game at home. I'm sorry, did I say that Vanderbilt's at home? They're on the road. Sorry. They're on the road at Texas A&M. Texas A&M lost their last game, which was at home against Tennessee. So Texas A&M looking to bounce back from that loss to Tennessee, taking on the Commodores. And we're getting to that point where you're studying bracketology, you're studying bubble watch. And by the way, to go back to what Hutton was talking about in terms of SEC seeding in the NCAA tournament, when the selection committee revealed its top 16 seeds about a week and a half ago, they had Auburn number 1 and Texas A&M number 2 in the South region. So the earliest those two teams could meet would be in the Elite Eight. Alabama was the number 1 seed in the Midwest. No other SEC teams in the top 4. Tennessee was the number 2 seed in the East. No other SEC teams in the top 4. Florida number 1, Kentucky number 3 in the West, which means a potential Elite Eight matchup as well. So Vanderbilt firmly on the bubble, Willie. Things may have gotten a little bit more complicated last night. Georgia beats it's not Auburn. Georgia beats Florida. Now, Georgia has some impressive wins on its resume. Last night, the most impressive. It beat Kentucky earlier in the season when Kentucky, I believe, was a top 10 team. Early in the season, before St. John's became one of the best teams in the country, Georgia beat St. John's. So Georgia has a solid resume, despite that the fact that they are, I want to say, 5-10 in SEC play. So Georgia putting a little pressure on Vanderbilt tonight as they take on Texas A&M.
I think I've been thinking all along that Georgia is in the race. There are 16 teams in the SEC, and really only 2 don't have a chance, a realistic chance, unless they win the SEC tournament, of getting in. Arkansas and Georgia still are very much alive in the bubble race. Vanderbilt ends the regular season in Athens against Georgia. So the double-edged sword is the committee's going to be watching that game closely. If Vanderbilt can win at Georgia, that becomes a very good road win. Like, you want Georgia to be good in some ways if you can beat them. But you're right. If you're doing the math and you're saying, gosh, what's the maximum amount of teams that they would take? If it's 13, then whoever the 14th team is going to be a pretty good team that's maybe on the outside. But they always say, hey, we're not paying attention to what league everybody's in. But can you imagine the squawking around the country if they get 14 teams in?
Woo. But they would be justified.
Well, they would be justified, but still there would be a lot of, hey, you're biased for the SEC. I think you would just hear a lot of squawking.
So
yeah, but it
right
would,
or wrong.
again,
according to Bubble Watch, sorry, Derek, according to Bubble Watch, these are the teams that ESPN says are locks in the SEC, which means they have a 95% chance or better of making the NCAA tournament. Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Missouri, and Ole Miss. How many teams did I just list off there? Was that 9?
Yeah.
Okay.
10, 9, 10.
9 or 10. So there are no teams in the SEC in the should be in category, which is a 70% to 94% probability. Work to do, 25% to 69%. Vanderbilt at 58%, Oklahoma at 55%, Texas at 51%, Arkansas at 43%, and Georgia at 37%.
So Georgia, I wonder how high their probability went up.
I will tell you exactly that. They would have dropped to 15% had they lost to Florida.
So it shows you how volatile and how precarious it can be. So if you're sitting there going, hey, our team is 55% or our team is 70%, it can change. It can change a lot. So let's get to Vanderbilt's game against Texas A&M tonight. Texas A&M is a good, hard-nosed team very well coached under Buzz Williams. One thing you know about a Buzz Williams team, they play hard. They are hard-nosed and tough. This team is interesting. They're an excellent defensive team, 6th best, according to KenPom. And that was an absolute battle they played against Tennessee on Saturday. What's the weakness of Texas A&M? They're not great shooters most nights. Now watch, tonight they'll be 9 for 18. I've just jinxed Vanderbilt. They're going to hit everything. Because Vanderbilt has run into those teams this year on their home court. We've talked about it, where Vanderbilt's playing a pretty good game, and it just seems like all of a sudden they can't get any stops in the second half. And the other team, like Florida, this happened against Kentucky, this happened against Auburn here, they were lights out offensively. And Vanderbilt is not a brilliant defensive team. So this Texas A&M team, by the numbers, isn't that type of explosive offensive team. But how do they get their offense? They crash the offensive boards. They are the number 1 team in America at getting offensive rebounds, partially because they miss a lot of shots.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of rebounds.
rebounds.
But percentage-wise, they're getting 42% of the misses. That's a huge number. So we know Vanderbilt undersized. They're going to have to do a great job of rebounding tonight of some of those misses. I think that's really where the game is going to be won or lost for Vanderbilt tonight. And let's see if they can get over the hump in a second half on the road, right, where they've put themselves in position against some really good teams on the road, but haven't been able to get over the hump and get a big win on the road. This won't be an easy one, but if they can get it, that's a big notch. I think Vanderbilt realistically is 2 wins away. Like we can play the percentages every day and watch other teams, but at the end of the day, with 4 games left at Texas A&M, Missouri at home, then Arkansas at home, at Georgia. If they win 2 out of 4, I really think that should be enough,
regardless of the
SEC tournament. I think
before this started, within the last, say, 12 games, and they were getting ready to go on this gauntlet, which they're still in. My thing was just win 2 to 3 out of that gauntlet. And that's not Arkansas and Georgia. That was minus Arkansas and Georgia, because at the time, Arkansas and Georgia wasn't ranked. I don't think they're still ranked.
Yeah, they're still that fringe bubble.
They're still that fringe bubble team. So if you win 2 games, they were able to get UT. Was it UT? No, Kentucky. They were able to beat Kentucky. They were able to beat Texas, even though Texas wasn't ranked. Or were they ranked?
They were not.
They were not ranked. But Texas is still a good team. They were not ranked. And now you look at it. Now that Georgia had that upset, to me, it's critical for them to beat Georgia. I think they have to beat Georgia now, before they enter into the SEC tournament. If you're looking at it now, I'm looking at the bracketology, and we've already discussed it. Vanderbilt is not on the bubble on any one of these.
Not today.
Not today. That's what I'm saying. Not today. And that's a good thing, because they got 4 or 5 games left?
4 regular season games
If
left.
they win 2 of those games, like you said, Willie, and right now, I don't care if the 2 are Arkansas and Georgia. At this point, you got to win 2. Why? Georgia's got a big upset, and Arkansas is playing well. So if you beat those 2 teams, then I think that puts you in a better position headed into the SEC tournament.
It might surprise people. Arkansas and Georgia right now have moved ahead of Texas in the KenPom efficiency ratings. So as good as Texas is, Texas has slipped a little bit, and Arkansas and Georgia have moved up a little bit.
Well, Arkansas is on the last 4 in now.
They're sliding up.
Yeah.
So you can listen to Vanderbilt take on Texas. Yes, I am. You can listen to Vanderbilt tonight. The Commodores are on the road at Texas A&M. 6:00 tip-off. Pregame starts at 5:30 on 94.9 The Fan. 615-737-1025. I want to discuss something interesting that was said by Brian Callahan yesterday that I feel like might have slipped through the cracks a little bit. We'll do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. We'll get into the Nashville Predators to start the 1 o'clock hour. Chris Mason will join us at 1:30. Another tough loss for the Predators last night to the Florida Panthers. And some interesting comments from Barry Trotz during his weekly conversation with Jared Stillman. We'll get into that to start the 1 o'clock hour. But with all of the stuff that was coming out yesterday, guys, from Brian Callahan and Mike Borgonzi, there was one tweet that I saw from Terry McCormick that I thought was quite interesting. Terry wrote, quote, Brian Callahan said if the Titans find a left tackle, they would be open to moving J.C. Latham to right. Said it is about having the two best tackles on the field. So according to Terry McCormick, Brian Callahan said if the Titans find a left tackle, they would be open to moving J.C. Latham to right tackle. That caught my attention. I didn't feel like it got a lot of play yesterday, but when I saw that tweeted, I said, that's interesting.
I mean, I guess at this point, you're trying to find anything that's going to help your team. I can't see them. And I know this is probably not, he's not speaking from the standpoint of drafting a guy. I think it's more so a free agent guy. If we can get a free agent guy that has played his career on the left side and done a good job, then yeah, we would be open to moving, why am I forgetting? J.C. Latham to the right side. We would be okay. But outside of that, I can't see them drafting a left tackle in the first 2 rounds and then moving JC over to right. If they go out in free agency and get a veteran guy who has been predominantly a left tackle, then okay, now we can move JC over and see how that goes. And because you're trying to make the offensive line as a whole better. And he said, I'm just trying to put the best 5 men on the field.
It's a thin free agency class at tackle. The number 1 tackle available is Ronnie Stanley, not to be confused with Robbie Stanley.
And Baltimore's not letting them get out the building, I don't think.
So Ronnie Stanley is a free agent. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Alaric Jackson with the Rams. He has 35 career starts, most at left tackle. He's 27 years old, 6'7", 345 pounds.
I can't see the Rams getting rid of him. I mean,
then you're going down to someone like Morgan Moses, who's been around for a long time. He's 34 years old. He's bounced around the league.
He's dealt with injuries too.
But I think he's primarily a right tackle. So I don't think the free agency class is fruitful when it comes to
My thing is, why go after Willie? Why go after? And I understand. Listen, maybe JC isn't, a top elite left tackle at this point.
Well, he's just a rookie.
Yeah, he's just a rookie at this point.
Young
and
rookie.
He's developing into a good player. We saw some good and we saw some bad. He's a rookie. Why would you move him to right side and not have an answer for left? At least I know what he's doing on the left side. Let's find a right tackle, which we don't have right now. Let's find a right tackle.
My first question was going to be to Adam, had he not just went down that vaunted list of potential free agents. Is there an obvious guy that they could have gone and gotten? And if that answer is no, then I'm with you, D-Mace. There's no reason to move what you've got. So I'm surprised they threw that out there because that's going to be red meat for who.
Yeah.
In the afternoon. I'm sure he's going to spend 3 hours on it today. But at the end of the day, I think Latham is on a good track to be a very good left tackle and maybe a very, very good one. I think if he continue, I like his makeup. He's got the physical tools. He's young. I think he just needs to play. And I'm not messing with that unless there is an obvious guy that I could go get who has to play left tackle. I mean, we know Latham is versatile enough and he has done it to play on the right side. So that might just give you that thought. But I mean, they got to come up with something on the right side, right?
Yeah. And okay. And
how much do you think, let me ask you this question first. How much do you think it's going to take to re-sign Ronnie Stanley in Baltimore?
Whew. Ronnie dealt with some injuries early, if I'm not mistaken, David. He dealt with some
Yeah,
injuries
he
early.
got hurt 2 years ago. He just
Yeah.
came back from some ACL surgeries.
So here's what The Athletic says. Stanley will likely make up the $7.5 million pay cut he took last offseason to remain with the Ravens in this year's voyage into free agency. He has said he wants to play his entire career in Baltimore, but the 31-year-old should have a competitive market if the Ravens don't extend him. Despite his injury history, including knee and ankle injuries, the latter limited him to 7 games total between 2020 and 2021.
And that's the problem. When he's on the field, he's a hell of a left tackle, one of the best in the game. But he's had those injury history. He had that injury history. He's 31 years old now. And he's going to command top dollar. So if you're willing, which I know Titan fans will look at it as, please don't do it. He has a history of being injured. So here we go again. Once again, another regime going down that road of getting injured players, regardless of how good you may think Ronnie Stanley is. And I think he's a hell of a tackle. But when you have that history of being injured at that position, and then you want another huge payday, I think that's going to cause some teams to back up. It should cause the Titans to back up because, again, they are not in a position to go out and get guys that have a huge injury history. They're not in that position no more. Again, if they were the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, then yes, you can sort of make that calculation of, you know what, we got a good enough team around and we can just get, 90% of the season out of them, then we're good. No, you're not. You need him to play every down, every game. And with that injury history, I'm not sure moving forward that's what you're going to get. He may play it this year, but then the next year he's dealing with injuries. Now you're locked into a contract for the next at least 3 years.
Yes, he started all 17 games last season for the Ravens. 13 the year before, 11 the year before that, 1 in 2021, and 6
exactly.
in
He has an injury history.
So let's put that aside for now and just put the Latham part of this aside for now and say, okay, assessing the free agent market, doesn't look like there's much there. So are we looking at a rookie right tackle for the Titans? If it's not a free agent and it's not,
it could be
NPT, Nicholas Petit-Frere again. I'm guessing
that is a banned phrase on this program. PT is a banned phrase.
Nicholas Petit-Frere,
yes,
right?
Not you can't call him PT.
Yeah,
I didn't call him PT. I got his initials wrong, but I didn't call him. I didn't say PT.
I think I heard PT. I might have heard PT.
I said NPT, which was wrong.
Okay, I didn't hear the N part.
Okay. So I'm still trying. I got to get that.
NPF.
They're not going to roll him out as the starter, right? He could be in a mix to be a backup, right? But we just know they're not going to do that. So if it's not a free agent, it's got to be a draft pick, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
Or is it a mix? It's maybe a lower dollar free agent guy and a rookie.
If they don't
hope it shakes out,
if they don't want to make
create
the same
competition.
mistake, if they don't want to make the same mistake that they made last year, then they will get as many right tackles, guys that have been proven,
like 12.
Yeah, as many right tackles as they possibly can.
If you played right tackle in high school 20 years ago, you might be getting a call.
Come on down. But if you got to, because to me, this is a position that they need to get right this season.
Yeah.
Outside of the quarterback position, I'm saying, but this is a position they need to get right. And we need to see instant productivity. Why? Because they've been inept at that position for the last 3 years.
615-737-1025. The Nashville Predators lost again last night. That's 8 of 10 in the loss column for the Nashville Predators. Barry Trotz with some interesting comments yesterday with Jared Stillman. We'll dissect those. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingid, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mason, Ginendonic, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vinkin here with you. Before we get to our Predators conversation, Matthew in Nashville texted in about our J.C. Latham conversation. You better pray the Titans don't go after Dan Moore Jr. from the Steelers, who was a free agent left tackle. He turns 27 when the season starts. He makes Andre Dillard look like Bruce Matthews.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. All right. Keep that name in mind.
Boy.
Dan Moore Jr. from the Steelers. That doesn't sound good. But also,
it does happen, though.
It does.
More than you want to admit, regardless of whether you're a Titans fan or any other NFL team. When you watch your team every week and a guy's not having a great year, you say, but this guy can't play in the game. We've got this guy's terrible. We got to get rid of this guy. And then the next thing you know, he goes to another team and he's a starter for like 3 years and it works. Like the guy
that didn't work for Dillard.
Here's a guy that jumped out to me this year that I hadn't even thought of in a couple years. Kendall Vildor. Remember the big game between the Vikings and the Lions on the last weekend of the regular season? Big seeding on the line, right? It's
number one seed in the NFC.
Close to
was
a
on the
playoff
line.
game without being a playoff game because it's for a bye. Kendall Vildor had a great game. Of course, Sam Darnold didn't have a great game, but the Lions got usage out of a guy named Kendall Vildor. Kendall Vildor's on the Titans.
He was.
I have no recollection of this.
We were joking about his name because he sounds like a character from Gandalf the Wizard, or Harry Potter. Here comes Vildor. And he lasted about 3 weeks here, but he's found a spot. Like sometimes you find
a change of scenery.
Right.
Sometimes
there's going to be a
difference.
turnover with players like that. You have to be good at finding spare parts that you can. And you never know who's going to turn into something useful.
Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side.
Indeed. Here's something that also sounds bad. The Nashville Predators lost again. They lost last night to the Florida Panthers 4-1. The Predators have lost 8 of 10. Things continue to get worse for the Predators. And Barry Trotz joined Jared Stillman yesterday at Barrel House, as he does on Tuesdays at 5 during the hockey season. And some interesting comments from Barry Trotz that I want to play and discuss. So the first is Barry Trotz mentioned that he had meetings with the top players on the team after the team returned from its break for the Four Nations face-off and told them, here's my plan for the next couple of years. Are you in? If you are, great. If not, let me know and I'll try to move you. I thought that was interesting. Here's Barry Trotz describing his plan as he described it to Jared.
How do you shake things up as far as the roster is concerned? Would you go to one of your guys if you felt like there was an opportunity and ask them to waive a no movement clause? How do you feel about that?
100%. 100%. I owe that to the team. I owe that to our staff. I owe it to the ownership, and I owe it to our fans. So if there is something, if someone that said, hey, you think about this, or if I propose something, if it made some sense, I would have no problem going to the player and say, listen, it's not working. Would you consider this?
So one thing whenever we discuss certain trades, and by the way, the NHL trade deadline is a week from Friday, March 7th. So 9 days before the NHL trade deadline, we talk about, well, this player has a no movement clause. He can't be traded. Well, players who have no movement clauses do waive no movement clauses. If they do not want to be in a bad situation, they can approach the general manager and say, hey, get me out of here. I will waive my no movement clause and help me find a new situation. Barry Trotz did say during that interview with Jared that when he talked to these top players, it sounded like there was buy-in from these top players. They're embarrassed by how this season has gone. They want to be a part of the solution. But I did think those comments about Barry Trotz saying, hey, I will absolutely go to a player with trade protection if I need to see if they want out or if we can make something work. I considering where we are in the NHL calendar, that stood out to me yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think that's huge news, honestly, that you in theory would go to somebody. the real question would be, when's the right time to do it, or have you already done it? Because I don't know. I don't think he's going to do. It doesn't seem to me, Adam. You tell me if you disagree, that he will do that this year at the trade deadline. So it's really a hypothetical for down the road. To me, the question is, how serious are you getting with some of these conversations about somebody like Ryan O'Reilly? What kind of calls are you getting? And I don't expect him to talk about that on the air, as open as Barry is, open book Barry, right? And Jared will ask, as we know. But that, to me, would be important. And are some of these names that are popping up that are centers, right? Barry Trotz has made no secret that he wants a center. He needs an upgrade at center. When you watch this team play last night, that jumps out at you. You had the highest of the high bar come in the Panthers. They are a championship team that plays a great team game. They ate up the Predators last night. Nashville had to fight to stay in the game and stay competitive, which they did. I thought they played hard after a bit of a slow start. And they were in the game. But the Panthers just didn't let them breathe. They didn't generate any offense, and the Panthers got a ton of offense. A Casey Middlestat, who has been thrown out there. You mentioned Dylan Cousins last week, and we had that discussion. Are you really barking up that tree and looking to do something big to try to shake it up for somebody like that? To me, those are key questions in the days leading up to the trade deadline, because we can talk about trading a spare part here or a spare part there, but is there going to be something big? Like moving O'Reilly would be big, and what are you getting? Making a move for Middlestat or Dylan Cousins or somebody like that, a younger center with some term, that would be big. Because right now you have a glaring problem. The other thing that happened last night, Roman Josi going out on a dirty hit that knocked him out of the game. I haven't heard anything around the league that there's going to be discipline.
I have not seen anything.
And if it's not happened by now, it's probably not going to happen.
But here was Andrew Burnett's quote on Roman Josi's status, according to our very own Nick Keyser. He's still being evaluated, Roman Josi is. Quote, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't really know with those things. It's a day-to-day. It's day-to-day. Could be week-to-week. Could be season-ending. We don't really know yet.
But that tells you what it is, right?
Yes.
Based on what you saw with the hit, based on those words, we can all but conclude exactly what that is. And I would think at this point, you are going to be very cautious with how you handle Roman Josi. He could be done for a good while. Mm-hmm. That was a dirty hit. So where does that leave you? You already have, we went backwards and forwards on this yesterday. The environment in front of UC Saros defensively is one of the toughest environments already with Roman Josi. Now take him out of the equation for a while. Last night, they gave up some glaring. Last night was a perfect example of everything we talked about yesterday with Kevin Woodley. UC Saros played a good game. They hung him out to dry. They gave up over 4 expected goals, 4.35. They gave up 11 grade A scoring chances. 3 of the 4 goals were goals that were really, really tough to defend. And I'm not sure he could have done anything about any of the 3. Then he had another one go off his own guy. They're going to have a big struggle defending. They need to find some bodies, I think, going forward that they experiment with defensively. That's another big area for Barry Trotz to pursue, center and defense.
Yeah, they got to find some way to improve their defense. And all the while their offense needs to pick up as well. Now, in regards to going back to Barry's statement or his response to Jared, this is sticky for me. This is, even though Barry has always, he said it at the beginning, listen, I am always going to do what's best for the organization. I owe that to them. But I think in a situation like this, you have to approach it with kid gloves. I'm talking about infant gloves, because the minute you go to that guy, you're signaling you're signaling to
Signaling.
him. Yeah, signaling.
There you go.
To him.
Words are hard. I get it.
Yeah, that you know what, you may not fit this team anymore. And are you agreeing to waive your no trade clause? Because I'm gonna ask both of y'all. Okay, if I agree, if I'm Stamkos or one of these guys, and I agree, or Brady Shea, more importantly, Brady Shea, if I agree to waive my no trade clause, does that now exclude it ever from being a part of my contract?
So this actually has changed.
Okay,
over
that's what
the
I want to.
So
yeah,
if I, Willie, please correct me if I'm wrong here. There was a time when if a player signed it happened with PK Subban, if I'm not mistaken, when he was traded from Montreal to Nashville. PK Subban, I believe, had trade protection in his contract, or it was about to start right before.
It was before his
Mhm.
protection kicked in.
There used to be a rule in the NHL, again, if I'm not mistaken, that the acquiring team can decide whether to honor the protection that another team signed. And I remember that David Poile did not honor that with PK Subban. So that clause did not travel with him to Nashville.
Can you
Now-
negotiate that on the front end and say, if this player is traded, it has to kick in? I don't know how that works. Does it depend on the individual contract, or is that just a straight, hard, fast rule?
I think at this point, if you had trade protection in your contract, you maintain trade protection in your contract. And again, if I'm not mistaken, to answer your question, Derek, if a player waives it, it's not like it's a one-time thing.
It's complete. It's gone now.
Right. So if he gets traded to another team, he has a no trade clause. It's not like you only can use this once in 7 years. So I think that has changed over time.
The only
Again,
way,
if I'm not mistaken.
the only way I am waiving it, and even under those circumstances, I'm still thinking about, this is not advantageous for me. The only way I don't is that if I know the team that I am potentially going to is a playoff team or a team that I can fit in right away. The offense is what I like and everything else. If that is indeed the case, or I just hate the organization and hate the team and hate the head coach, that's the only way I'm moving off of a no trade clause being removed from my contract, because you fought for that for a reason. I'm just not going to easily, just because you feel that, you would be able to get, a little bit more if I traded said person. Well, you may think that way, but that's not what I agree with. So when you're going down that road, you got to be cautious. You got to have went over this a million times amongst yourself and whoever else in front office. Like, listen, if we do this, this can potentially, this is what the fallout can be. Because I can just say, you know what? I don't want to get traded. Y'all don't want me here. I'm just going to play it out. I'm not going to cause a fuss. I'm just going to play it out.
So in 2020, the CBA was amended to provide that no trade and no movement clauses shall always travel with the player in the event of an assignment by trade or waivers. So when PK Subban was traded here, that was not the rule. So it was the Predators' decision.
Oh, so if that's the case, then just send me to a team that's winning.
I think the no trade thing tends to work itself out. It's negotiated. The player has some leverage, but the player then can down the road utilize that leverage or not. He can.
But what I'm saying is, don't send me to a crap like a bad team.
That's where he has the leverage to say, no, I'm not going there. So I thought there were some other things in the interview that caught my attention a little bit more. And one of them was going to the players that are the quote, your best players have to be your best players, which has been a big, big problem for this Nashville team, is the ones that they've invested in to a person have had below average years for them. And that's being kind, right? They've haven't just not had career years. They just had very poor years collectively. And Barry Trotz wants to know, are they in for the long haul? He went to those guys and said, are you guys in with this plan? Here's my plan. You guys in? If you're not, let me know, and I'll try to move you. That was, to me, that was interesting news. That was an interesting piece of strategy that Barry Trotz was willing to share.
Yes. Scott is in Hendersonville on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Scott, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yes, Willie, I wanted to get your thoughts on how they could give up some of the stuff they gave up last night. That first goal in particular, where you had 4 guys out, it seemingly outside the red dot, nobody anywhere near the crease, and you got, leave a 2-on-0 in the crease on a power play. UC was totally hung out to dry. And, coming off the break, they said, well, we're going to reevaluate what we're doing. We're going to, give up some offense to, tamp down on defense. And they looked really good against Colorado. I was at that game. Part of it, honestly, I think McKinnon looked totally out of gas as well. But they did look good against Colorado. But ever since then, they have looked like total garbage. I mean, it is horrific, the team D they're playing. And it's making me question Bruno and whether we should get rid of him now, because I don't understand how it can be that bad. It's like Pee-wee hockey bad, some of the stuff they're doing out there. What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks for the call, Scott. And actually, you bring up Andrew Burnett. I do want to play another clip from the interview with Jared yesterday. This is Barry Trotz discussing the immediate future for Andrew Burnett.
Because I'm looking for kind of a big change that might kind of shift the equilibrium around here.
Mhm.
And if you can't do it on a roster front, then wouldn't the next logical step be the coach?
That's, I think everybody looks at it that way. I look at it probably a little differently. The response that we get from now to the end of the year, and then obviously we're going to have meetings with the players. We're going to get I'm going to have a really good feel with direction. I mean, I'm with you. I think Andrew's a hell of a good coach. But at the same time, there has to be the roster and the coach have to, have that be in sync in all aspects. So I'm running this to the end. We'll assess and we'll make our decisions.
That was Barry Trotz yesterday. So for those of you who are wondering if Andrew Burnett could be replaced before the end of the season, it certainly does not sound like that. And Barry Trotz has said that on other occasions with Jared. But it's sort of what we talked about yesterday, guys. These final 25 games are incredibly important for Andrew Burnett.
Yeah, I think that speaks for itself. That was an interesting comment. And it hasn't given you a better feeling right now. But let's address the caller's question. All right. Last season's defense core, because we can talk about the system and everything, but let's talk about the players playing defense. And we know, too, in a bigger discussion, the forwards' defensive ability factors in here. But if you're just looking at defensemen, last year, Yossi McDonough, Lauzon Carrier, Schenn, Stastny, and Fabro. That's your 7D that played most of the games, pretty much stayed healthy, and gave you very good, in my opinion, very good defense, especially compared to this year, right? Now what they thought they had at the beginning of the season this year. Stastny, they found out late in the summer he's not coming. He's not coming to training camp. That was the first problem. So he's not there at training camp. So that left them with Yossi, Brady, Shea, Carrier, Lauzon, Schenn, Fabro, with a Mark Del Gaizo, with an Adam Wilsby on the outside. So they thought they were okay there. So what has happened since then? Yossi and Shea, not a good mix. Had to split them up. Lauzon, injured. Carrier, injured. Then traded. Del Gaizo, Fabro waived when they were up against the salary cap. That has turned out to be one that has really burned them. What did they get for Carrier? They got Justin Barron. That has been a net minus right now. So that leaves you, now that Yossi is hurt, here are your 6 defensemen. Brady Shea, who hasn't had a good year. Justin Barron, who has been nowhere near at this point. He's younger, but he's nowhere near the defenseman that Alex Carrier is. Nick Blankenberg, overachiever, asked to do way, way too much for his ability. He was on the ice for a couple of those goals that the caller was referring to last night. Ugly, ugly defensive breakdowns. Jake Livingstone, who hasn't played in the NHL in a couple of years, he's the next man up. He will be the 14th defenseman, 14th to appear in at least one game. Andreas Englund picked up off the waiver wire. who has not played. He's only played 11 NHL games coming into tonight to joining the Predators, and Luke Shen, who is again having to play in a much bigger role than he should be having to play at this stage of his career. So you've gone from a defense core that at the end of last year was a very good one to this year piecing together and duct taping something. And some of it's their own fault, right? Because of the trade of Carrier and the wave of Fabro, they've gone to basically an AHL defense core. That is not going to make it easy. No, I don't care what system you play. You can't mask the drop off in talent there. Right?
Yes, the Predators have made a minor trade with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've traded Anthony Angelo, who's been with Milwaukee this season. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly.
Anthony.
For Jesse
Ilonen.
Yeah. Okay, I was way off.
It's a minor league.
It's a minor league deal.
They're trying to position Milwaukee as best they can because they've had to dip down in Milwaukee a lot.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with the big club between now and next Friday at the NHL trade deadline. 615-737-1025. We will bring Chris Mason, Predators TV analyst, into the conversation next. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace, Finn, Ginadonic, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Mingan joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com by Predators television analyst Chris Mason. Chris, we were just playing some clips from Barry Trotz's interview with Jared Stillman yesterday. Some interesting things from Barry Trotz. I'm sure you've had an opportunity to listen to the interview. Did anything stand out to you in particular?
Well, I heard some bullet points of it, and I mean, he's been very honest in this situation, and I think the writing's been on the wall here for quite some time, and I think some of the takeaways that I look at is some of the evaluation process of the games being played now. It's obviously meaningless in a standings point, and I know a lot of the the fan base, and when you look at the big picture, it might be more of a benefit to finish.
Did we lose Chris?
Mace, come in, Mace. That sounds like something out of a movie.
Mace just hit a tunnel or something.
We've lost communication.
Somebody get that communication back up now! Now!
Need backup.
Chris, do we have you?
I don't think we do.
Well, we'll endeavor to get Chris back on the line. But let's pick up on the conversation.
Okay.
Yes, that was
Goodness, that was abrupt.
Yeah, it sounded like a scene out of Top Gun there for a minute.
It's like somebody rolled the window down.
So let's talk Andrew Brunette a little bit more. We have one texter on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Actually, this is more about Barry Trotz, I think, than Andrew Brunette, if I can find the text. Joey from Bellevue. Isn't it the GM's responsibility for the unexpected defensive issues? Why let Fabro go and trade Carrier if the guys he's going to call on to replace them are what Jared would call scarbeanies? Seems like getting rid of them was a desperation move to free up some cap space since he can't get rid of the bigger, longer-term deals.
I do think it's fair to say, and I think Barry Trotz would have to look himself in the mirror and say that was a calculated risk to create cap space, get younger, and it has backfired. To this point, I don't think you could even argue that. The question is, even down the road, is that a sunk cost? Like, I think the time they waived Fabro, I think they really believed that Mark Del Gaizo had passed him, we're saying, okay, we're at least getting equal value, and he's a lot cheaper. We're not going to sign Fabro next year, so let's let Del Gaizo play. Del Gaizo faltered. He's in the minors. Now, Justin Barron, we've seen some serious growing pains. Some of the issues he had in Montreal have not gotten better here. And they parted ways with Carrier, who was signed to a reasonable cost, but not something that was going to totally break the bank.
We have Chris Mason back on the line. Chris, we hope you're okay. We don't know what happened there.
Well, I'm actually getting my truck washed, and they turned my truck on, so it went into the phone, so I couldn't hear you guys. So I was like, hello? I was like, I got 5 bars. What's going on here? But sorry about that.
It sounded like you were on an F-16 that we lost communication straight out of a movie. So we're talking about the defensive issue, so let's pick up there. The defensive core this season it's been a who's who, I guess you could say, more so by the fact that you're like, who's that? Who's that? Now with the news that Roman Josi's status is uncertain, what should we expect from this defense core moving forward?
Well, I mean, it's tough to really have any sort of expectation because even with Roman Josi in the lineup, it hasn't been a strong defensive effort this year, no matter, who's been in or who's out. It's been a tough go. And, we talk about the defensemen, but you have to, lump everybody in to that. Everybody, the forwards are obviously responsible for some of the defensive ineptitude and deficiencies that the teams had this year. But it's tough. If you look at the D-core last year, the D-core that the team started with this season, you expected that to be one of the strong suits of this hockey team, along with, adding the offense that we did as well in the offseason. And it was really completely the opposite. And that's been probably one of the most disappointing factors, I think. The offense dried up, and it's been, pretty abysmal all season long. But, you can still compete if you play well defensively as a team in this league and find ways to win if you're taking care of that part of your game. And it never really seemed at any point this season that was really in order, aside from an effort here or there. So that's probably been one of the biggest disappointments. And then in turn, we've had all the UC Saros talk, and in my opinions got blown, completely out of proportion, because that's just the easy target. The goalie's letting in the goals and you're not winning hockey games. But, it's a large part of that is everything that's happening or not happening in front of him. And he's definitely a product of that. And, by no stretch am I saying that he's had the best season of his career, because it's been up and down by his standard that he's set. But I think, it's clear that the Predators were, a terrible defensive team this year. And it didn't help. If you're going to be bad defensively, well, you better score goals. And they weren't able to do that either, near the bottom of the league. So it's just been, it just continues to be a season that you just shrug your shoulders and scratch your head, because, you look at the roster, to start the season, there's no reason why they shouldn't have been good in one category or the other, or both for that matter. And it was, pretty much neither of them all season long, aside from a stretch before the break there, when they were scoring a lot of goals. But, I don't think you can really have any realistic expectations of, going down the stretch, other than giving guys opportunities, seeing if a guy like Barron, who looks to struggle defensively in his game, can maybe, get a chance to kind of play through some of those issues and learn on the fly. You might get some looks at some other guys in the system. Livingstone might get another look, or they could call somebody else up as well. But it's, I think that's kind of the direction you have to see what you have, and maybe, can acquire somebody in one of the moves, either off waivers or at the trade deadline.
Now, Steve Mace, you can give some insight on this, because you played the position. What do you think is going through UC Saros' mind right now? Because listen, he knows he's not playing his best hockey, but he also see that they have deficiencies in front of him, and I'm sure he's hearing UC's not doing this. UC just got this big contract. So I have to believe there is some type of stress that is going on with him, because all of this is coming at sort of the worst time, when you sign a big deal, and then all of a sudden the very next season, or the very same season, you're not just you, but the organization, the team as a whole, isn't playing well. Period. And not just your play, but the guys in front of you not playing well. So what is going through a goalie's mind when all of this is transpiring?
Well, I think last game against the Panthers was, kind of sums up, I think, how he's been feeling. And you could see a lot of the players too, that you look at the body language and, the response after goals. I mean, what are you going to do on any of those goals? It was breakdowns, 2-on-0, goes off your own guy in the net. And it's unbelievable. Another one, the guy's left all alone. And this is after making 5, 6, 7, great saves. And look at the body of work. Spencer Knight played he played a fine game, but really wasn't challenged too much, didn't have any breakaways, didn't have those types of opportunities. So you can go out there and play a good game, letting 4 goals, and, you got another one in the loss column. And it's just utter frustration. It's almost like everyone else. So here we go again. You're putting in a game, you're in it. Oh, 2-on-0. You just saved a breakaway and a redirect a good guy wide open in front, and then the next play is a 2-on-0, or it goes off of your own guy. I think it's just been one of those seasons where you just can't believe that it keeps happening. And I feel like that calling the games. They're playing hard. They're in it. There's stretches where you think, okay, here, Colorado, they come back, play a great game. New Jersey, they start, and all of a sudden, they give up a goal in the second period, and it's downhill from there. And then, Florida, you're playing the Stanley Cup champions. There's no margin for error. But the goals that they gave up, they gave them off of turnovers, bad coverage plays. Florida is going to create enough of their offense on their own, but the goals that they gave up was because of the chances that the Predators gave them. So that's disappointing. And I think it's just been a season of just enormous frustration for Saros.
Mace, one thing that Adam and I were kicking around for a segment that we're going to do tonight on Predators Insiders was Casey Middlestat. This is just the latest name of an intriguing guy. We know that Barry Trotz has been public about his desire to upgrade the center position. Last night was a good example of a guy like Fedor Svechkov not quite being ready to play against the best team or one of the best teams in the NHL. And they just turned the car wash back on, I guess, for C Mace. You still there with us, Mace?
Did we lose Chris again?
Sounds like they turned on the hose of the car wash and everything like that. I feel like we should play Car Wash by Rolls Royce.
You know, why don't we do that?
Oh, he's
All right,
back.
there he
He's
is.
back.
All right.
So middle stat, right? We know Svechnikov's not ready to play up in the lineup yet. He might need to go back down to Milwaukee, regain confidence, etc. So we know the issues with Novak. Stamkos, we know the issues of the pluses and minuses of him at center. What do you think of a middle stat if you're looking at Barry Trotz and Middlestat, who's 26, playing in Colorado, if Colorado is looking to shake it up?
Well, I think he's a guy. I mean, he doesn't fly off the charts with a whole lot of flash or superstar prowess. But I think with him, you know what you're going to get.
Did we lose Chris again? We may have to call it on Chris. Unfortunately, Chris Mason, Predators television analyst, whatever he's saying right now is probably really good.
Mm-hmm.
But
Definitely.
you can listen to Chris Mason with Willie Donick again tomorrow night on FanDuel Sports Network when the Predators take on the Winnipeg Jets. Also, as Willie mentioned, he and I are co-hosting Predators Insiders, which you can hear right after Smashville Live tonight, 7 o'clock, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We'll wrap up the show.
We will get into the middle stat thing tonight.
Yes,
so
we will.
Be
We will get
listening
into
to
that
Yeah.
in depth. We will wrap up the show next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingy, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Okay, so it's time to talk League Company, proud sponsor of our Nashville Predators coverage. If the Predators call up Jesse Ylönen, we are going to have to do some practicing on how to pronounce his name. I'm going to rely on Max Hurst to help us do that if and when that happens. We'll see if he goes to Milwaukee or not. Ylönen, however you say it, has played about 100 games or so in the NHL. Predators swap minor leaguers in a trade today. Meanwhile, League Company, day to day, they continue to work on everybody's homes. And whoever calls them for their needs, they're ready to do it. 615-567-1000. If you've got a general maintenance problem at home or at work, they've got that department at League Company. Just go to leaguecompany.com. You can make an online appointment if that's how you want to go. If the heater's on the fritz or if you want to get your air conditioning checked for the coming months, League Company's got you covered. 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com. Highly recommend you get that air conditioning checked before the weather gets hot. And they've got their year-round maintenance plan. That's where you get that annual coverage. I highly recommend that. League Company, proud sponsor Nashville Predators. Preds in action tomorrow night against the league's best Winnipeg Jets. Our coverage starts at 6, and it's brought to you by League Company.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. Sorry, we had to cut Chris Mason short there. Chris, if you're listening, turn off your Bluetooth next time. I think that's what was going on.
You think so?
You know how sometimes when
maybe the car wash was just really, really good though, and now his vehicle is pristine,
so clean he cut off his phone.
But I got some flashbacks today. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow. But the NFLPA released its report cards.
Yeah,
the dirt.
Right. So it reminded me of. I'm not proud to say this, but I'm honest with you guys. And I'm in a good mood because I ate all of my Skittles. When I was
feeling a little rushed right now, feeling
he
happy.
Has to be.
Yeah,
has to be. Yes.
I have to take my son to gymnastics after this, so I need to show.
Oh, you're going to be crashing. You're going to be on the pommel horse, just crashed.
Nobody said I was doing gymnastics. I just have to sit there.
He's going to have a meltdown instead of his kid.
Yeah, that's right. That's what's going to happen.
My son's going to be peering through the glass, and he's just going to be like, "Who's that grown up freaking out over there?" It's me.
My dad.
Oh, that's dad. He's okay.
Like father, like son. Either way. When I was a freshman in college, I failed a class. I failed a class my freshman year in college.
Ooh.
Yes, I did.
Did you forget you had the class?
No, I just wasn't good at it.
Okay, so you took the flag.
So you're one of us, Adam.
I never pretended to be. I never pretended to be a know-it-all. Y'all just think I am because I wear these big ass glasses. But my university sent home basically a demerit, a report card, letting my parents know that I failed the class. I made sure to intercept that mailing, and I hid it. Let me tell you where I hid it. I had back in the day. I had a boombox. Remember boomboxes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I had a boombox with
we just played.
Yes.
In your eyes, that's the boombox.
I had a boombox with a 12 CD changer. I hid it inside the 12 CD changer.
You had a boombox with 12 CDs in there?
Give me some. That's brilliant.
I mean, he is a Duke fan, so
that's a big boombox.
Your parents are never going in there.
They're not going in there.
They're not touching that.
Yeah.
They eventually found out. I don't know how they found out, but it wasn't by going through the boombox. I said, they're never going to look in here.
How did you get one with 12 CDs? That's even better covered. If there's only one CD, then maybe they hit the button by accident.
Well, it was 2000. It would have been 2008, the summer after my freshman year in college. So back in the day, you could get 12 CD.
I had one. Mine was more than 12.
But you said it's a boombox. It's not like a stereo system. It's like a.
Well, it was a stereo.
Yes, he said boombox stereo.
Whatever.
A boombox is portable, right? That's how my definition. Now here we go with the lemon lime. Is it green? Is it yellow?
Yeah.
Let's not even.
I know what he was talking about.
Point
but
is,
you are right.
Okay,
you are right.
Yeah.
I used my ingenuity to
Yes,
hide
you
the
did.
fact that I failed the
You
class.
intercepted and then
hid.
What would you say? You embezzled, or what would be you buried the evidence?
Maybe.
They never found out.
Well, they found out eventually because I think they had to look at my transcript at some point, but I hid it for 2 years. It wasn't until my junior year that they found that I failed the class my freshman year in college.
And by that time, you were on your road to graduation,
to where I am right now.
Yes, there we go.
So I turned out okay. So if you fail the class, you may also turn out okay.
Probably not.
Probably not. You know who got a big fat F? Woody Johnson, owner of the New York Jets.
Oh, man,
he was the only team. He was the only owner in the league to receive an F. The New York Jets received an F for ownership. And by the way, this is from the players. The players fill this out. So Woody Johnson and the Jets received an F for ownership, the only team in the league to do so. Overall, the Jets fell from 21st overall in 2023 to 29th this past season. According to ESPN, regarding Johnson, the NFLPA said the players, quote, cite perceived top leadership issues, with some describing issues as top-down problems. It notes how the Jets' ownership grade dropped from B- to F, with Johnson receiving the lowest score for contributing to a positive team culture. Quote, rather than addressing concerns, players believe that management responded to feedback by making conditions worse.
Okay, what
making conditions worse?
Yes.
So that's right out of Major League.
Yeah. Oh, y'all don't like this? All right, I'm gonna show y'all. And make it worse.
Say
Listen,
less.
I would say, because I did have a half a cup of coffee there, no cream, just black coffee. The facilities are top notch. The facilities are awesome. You go to the Jet facilities, at least when I was there.
Is that Florham Park, New Jersey?
Yes, Florham Park. Yes, it was really nice. I mean, top of the line. Now, in regards to this other stuff, I mean, maybe that is the case. Because to me, it started back then. The dysfunction within the organization, and it sort of permeated for the next, what was that, 2010 when I was there? So you're talking about another 14 years. It just grabbed hold of everything within the organization, which has led them to getting an F right now. So you just don't get Fs like from one semester. Like if you got a B the first semester and got a D the second semester, it don't turn out to be an F. That F was like long standing, like you're working toward that F.
One of the things it mentions in the story about making conditions worse. After receiving low grades for their food program last year, players felt the team cut the food budget and did not retain their longtime dietitian, who was previously their highest rated staff member.
Ooh.
So you don't like our food? We're gonna make it worse.
And we're going to get rid of the person that was making it good. Who does that sound like? But anyway, let's move on.
So
I like doing that.
I'm a kindred spirit with Woody Johnson. We've both failed at something. We've both been given big fat Fs.
Yeah, I mean,
ouch.
Listen, and we will get into the Titans stuff tomorrow.
Yes, we will.
Or this week.
But let's leave the question on the table as for people to ponder until we get into the grades.
We reconvene tomorrow.
What is an appropriate standard, and how much are players guilty maybe of coming from a program like Oregon or a high grade
Ohio State
Michigan, who pours tons of money into
SEC,
and it's an arms race with the recruiting process. Oh, let me coddle you here. Hey, we've got a video game system here for you in your locker. Oh, we've got masseuses over here. We got jacuzzis over here.
We got a shoe shining machine right here.
How much do you really need? And what's extravagant where a player gets coddled and then gets to the NFL is like, oh, this isn't nice enough, man. We had nicer stuff. We had nicer stuff in Oregon, man.
That is the question. That's the question. Majority of y'all, and I'm only talking about the ones that came from Big Ten or SEC schools. Y'all never struggled. Because SEC schools and Big Ten schools, they are top notch. They are. Facilities-wise, they are. Now, if you've come from another division, lower division, HBCU, Division 2, 3, then okay, I can understand. But those that are probably complaining come from big schools. And it's like, dude, what are y'all complaining? I understand one part of it. Some of this stuff is just like, is it really that bad, or are y'all just coddled that much?
We'll attempt to answer that question tomorrow. Still in the company coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a blessed, wonderful, safe, sunny Wednesday. Peace.